Welcome, my friends, to another edition of the Railroad Corner. Today I thought I would spend a little time talking about some of the various jobs I worked during my career with the railroad. Can't cover them all in this session, but I was looking at this picture here on the wall of Inman Yards that brings to mind several jobs that I used to work, and I thought I would just highlight them for you a little bit and go over some of the things we did. First, let's zoom in on the picture and do a little talk about that. We're looking at a picture of Inman Yards, Georgia, a Norfolk Southern train yard. And you can't see the whole yard, but you can see the forwarding yard or outbound yard here. Right about where you see that cement tower was what we called an 8-speaker. And that's a cement company. Penn-Dixie, I believe, was the name of it. This building right here was the repair track where we repaired cars. So you had track 1, 2, 3, 4 and the derrick track over there. It's where we used to repair cars under that shed. I worked that job quite a bit. I'll cover that in more details in another video. But I'm talking about train yard jobs today. Here's the old stock pen track. The stock pen where they used to unload cattle and stuff years ago, that's been tore down. There's an engine terminal or something there now. This little building here is in the main tower. It overlooks the receiving yard or inbound yard where the trains came into the yard over here. I worked there about 3.5 years, second shift. At this point right here is the hump where they go down to the class yard, which you can't see in this picture. The class yard had like 60 tracks where they classified the different cars as to where they were going. Down here on this end, I don't know if I'm in the camera lens or not, this end of the train yard, they would pull them out of the classification yard and shove them into these outbound tracks and build their trains in these tracks here. So this train here is most likely a train that's being built. It's an outbound train and shoved from the north end. Or it's already built, getting ready to go one. So we had Carman worked in various places all over this train yard. We'll start out talking about over here in the outbound yard. Carman worked over there doing box packing jobs, which was putting oil in the journals, air jobs, which was coupling all the air hoses, make sure everything's right with the air brake system. Brake tests were made and everything else before it left the yard right here. Inbound yard over there, we would just inspect cars. And I'll talk about that job in more detail. But like I say, today I'm talking about the jobs over here in the outbound yard or forwarding yard at Inman Yards. We'll discuss air jobs. First you got to look at how a boxcar or a freight car works. Freight cars have big huge air reservoirs under the bottom of them that hold a tank full of air that operates your air brakes. When cars came into the receiving yard, all the air was drained out of them so they could be free-wheeled or humped over the hump into the classification yards. You can't roll a car down the hill without draining the brakes first. The brakes would just come on and prevent it from going down the hill. So you think about how a boxcar or freight car works. When you pack all this air in the reservoir, and the brakes, the air pressure reduces, the brakes come on. Apply air pressure to it and the brakes release. So over in the forwarding yard, these trains were shoved and built in the outbound yards. One of the jobs we worked was called the air job. We had carmen work in the south end, in the middle of the train yard, and at the north end. What your job to do when you was working air was to walk down your section of the train. It was divided into 3 different sections because it's usually about a mile long. One person can do a whole train, but it'd take about all day. But by dividing it up into 3 different sections, we could work the air on a train a lot faster. And what I mean by working the air, we would couple the air hoses, the glad hands together. We would look on both sides of the coupler to make sure the angle cocks were open. That's the air valve that shuts off the air flow. Air has to flow from one end of the train to the other freely, all the way from the locomotive, to work the brakes properly. As you was walking a train, coupling these air hoses, you had to inspect for anything that might be physically wrong with the car, like a bad wheel or broke coupler, just about anything you would find that would prevent the car from going from leaving it. And if you did, it had to be set back out of the train and classified as a bad order needing repair. But usually we caught most of the bad orders over in the receiving yard. The receiving yard jobs, as soon as a train would come into the train yard from Chattanooga or up in Tennessee somewhere, or way out west somewhere, it would come into the train yard, and the transportation department had men working the air jobs, air bleeding jobs, where they would walk down that train, bleed all the air off the trains. Carmen in the receiving yard, we would walk the trains looking for any kind of bad odor, anything needing repair, and usually we would find it in on that job there. Cars were then marked as bad odor, and when they went to the hump to be classified, if they saw a bad odor tag hanging on it, it was humped off to the repair tracks. The repair tracks would repair the car in due time and shove it out the south end of the repair track, where it would again be picked up and put in an outbound train. A bad order car could be delayed several days that way. I'm just touching lightly on some of the Carman jobs. We had a Carman job at the hump called working the pit. Now down in the pit, you're sitting down in this, like an observation platform down at wheel level. You could look out these windows and see the train cars going by to be shoved over the hump. I worked that job a considerable amount of times. You had a speaker talking up to the main tower, and that's where they really got looked at underneath the running gear and everything. It wasn't uncommon to look up under there and see something broke or hanging down, get on the speaker and say, set this car out, it's a bad order. You know, somebody walking the train yard might not have saw it looking underneath there. So it got a second look as it was going to the classification yard by a Carman in the pit. I can't touch on all the details of the jobs, but that was covered most of the train yard jobs. We had train yard jobs working cabooses. I've worked that track a lot. We had a local yard where we built pig trains. I worked over there a lot. We had a rail plant. I worked a rail plant job a couple of years, repairing rail trains for shipping welded rail. That was all in a period of about 15 years. The last 15 years of my career, I took what they call an outline point job, and I worked out on a line of road repairing bad order cars. I was based out of Griffin, Georgia, and worked under Columbus Territory for quite a while until Columbus Territory came off the Georgia Division and was transferred to the Alabama Division, whereas I went back under the thumb or rule of Inman Yards. Inman Yards began to run me a lot up and down all over Atlanta just about every day. I couldn't complain. It was a job and I enjoyed doing it. And it wasn't uncommon for me to drive several hundred miles in a day. I had my own company truck and I would drive it home at night and park it right here in my yard. And if they needed somebody to go to a derailment or somebody down this way, all they had to do was call Walter and he was in the truck headed that way. I had the added benefit of using the company truck to go from here to the office downtown. But we found that leaving the company trucks down there in Griffin, it was not uncommon to go to work the next day and find all your tools stole right off the truck. So the vehicle was much safer here at my house. Anyway, that's just a touching lightly on some of the railroad jobs I worked. I'll cover it more in detail if you're interested. I had a lot of people asking me some of the most recent videos about some of the jobs we used to do. All around me here you see a lot of railroad memorabilia I've collected over the years. So that's why I call this my Railroad Corner. And this is Pwalpar signing off for today. Thanks for listening.